My father controlled me only for the kingdom, now I know. For years I mistook his commands for love, his stern gaze for protection, his silence for wisdom. I believed every word he spoke was for my good, for the good of the crown I was destined to inherit. But now, the illusion has shattered. I see him clearly, not as a father, but as a ruler who used his son as a pawn in a game of power. The kingdom was his obsession, and I was merely another piece on his board. Every decision he made for me was not out of care, but out of calculation. I was shaped, molded, and restrained to serve his ambition. He taught me that emotions were a weakness, that compassion was a flaw, and that love was a threat to the throne. I see now how carefully he stripped away my humanity, replacing it with duty and pride. Every time I smiled too freely, he called it childish. Every time I hesitated to hurt another for the sake of power, he called it failure. I was never allowed to be a son, only a shadow of his expectations. My heart was a weapon he dulled, my will a leash he tightened. And I followed him believing it was honor, when it was only control. I remember the first time I saw disappointment in his eyes. It was when I showed kindness. A wounded soldier had bowed before me, trembling, expecting punishment for failing in battle. Instead, I helped him stand. My father's voice thundered across the hall that night, calling me unfit to lead. That moment changed me. I realized then that my father's love was conditional, measured not by warmth, but by how well I obeyed. His affection came only when I mirrored his ruthlessness, his pride only when I silenced my heart. Now that he's gone, I walk through this palace and feel the ghosts of his rules haunting every corridor. The kingdom he built stands tall, yes, but at what cost? A legacy built on fear and obedience cannot last. He used me to preserve the kingdom, but in doing so, he destroyed the very soul of it. I used to envy him, to crave his approval, but now I pity him. Because in his hunger for control, he never learned what it means to truly live. He ruled everyone, even me, but he was never free. Sometimes, I still hear his voice in my mind, sharp and commanding, telling me that the kingdom must come before all else. And for a long time, I believed him. I sacrificed my happiness, my love, even my truth, thinking I was doing what was right. But a kingdom without a heart is a cage, and I will not let his legacy become my prison. I am not him, and I refuse to wear his chains disguised as honor. I think he feared me, not because I was weak, but because I was different, because I dared to feel, because I saw beyond the crown, beyond the walls of this palace, beyond the lies of power. He feared the heart he couldn't control. And now, as I stand in the place he once ruled, I finally understand he didn't raise a son, he tried to create a mirror. But mirrors break, and sons grow into men who see the truth. I no longer seek his approval, nor his forgiveness. Let history remember him as a great king if it must. But I will remember him as a man who taught me everything I should never become. The kingdom he loved may still stand, but it will not own me. I will rule it differently. Not through control, but through understanding. Because I have learned, painfully and finally, that power without love is nothing but another form of emptiness. The truth of his control weighs heavier now that I finally see it. Every word he ever spoke to me had two meanings. One for the kingdom, one for my obedience. He called me his heir, but I realize now that he only ever saw me as an extension of his throne, not as his blood, not as his son. Every lesson he taught was about power, never peace. Every victory I earned was his triumph, never mine. I spent my whole life chasing his approval, thinking it would make me worthy. But in truth, it only made me hollow. There were days when I wanted to tell him how much I hated the person I was becoming. The prince who wore pride like armor, but couldn't feel anything beneath it. the son who smiled in public but was dying in silence. But I never did, because his eyes could silence nations, and I was just a trembling boy in front of his throne. His voice wasn't loud, yet it carried the weight of authority that made everyone bow, everyone, including me. I obeyed, not out of love, but out of fear disguised as loyalty. I see it now in the way my people look at me, the same way they looked at him, with reverence but never warmth, with fear but never affection. They see a prince who carries his father's shadow and mistake it for strength. But that's not the legacy I want. My father taught me that ruling means commanding, that mercy is weakness. Yet I've come to believe that mercy is what truly defines greatness. He ruled hearts with fear. I want to lead them with faith. Perhaps that is what will finally set me free from his grasp. Sometimes I wonder if he ever felt remorse, if late at night, behind his stoic mask, he thought about what he took from me. Did he ever regret molding me into something I never wanted to be? Or was he so consumed by the idea of control that he forgot what it meant to love? He died with power in his hands, but I think his heart was already gone long before his body failed. I stand before his portrait now, and I see the same eyes that look back at me in the mirror. But I am not him. I cannot be him. My father's control may have shaped my past, but it will not define my future. The kingdom he built through fear will one day learn a different kind of rule, one born of understanding, not obedience. I no longer wish to wear the crown if it means repeating his cruelty. Let the council whisper, let the nobles doubt me. I would rather be a kind ruler than a cold imitation of the man who made me. I have his blood, yes, but I also have a heart that he could never destroy. Even now I can almost hear him, his voice echoing in my mind, calling me weak for letting love guide me. But I've learned that love is not weakness. Love is what separates the ruler from the tyrant, the man from the monster. He controlled me for the sake of power. I will free myself for the sake of peace. I will not live chained to his legacy. His reign may have ended, but his control still lingers like a ghost. I must learn to banish. And when my time comes, I hope my son, if I ever have one, will not speak of me the way I speak of him. I want him to remember not a ruler, but a father. I want him to inherit compassion, not fear. I want him to rule with his heart unchained. My father used his power to shape me into what he wanted. I will use mine to let others be what they truly are. That, I believe, is the only way to break his cycle and finally to reclaim myself from the kingdom that once owned me. The older I grow, the more I see how deep his control ran. It wasn't just in his words or his commands. It was in the silence he wrapped around me. Every time I wanted to speak my heart, his gaze reminded me that emotion had no place in a ruler's life. He didn't have to raise his voice to break me. His disappointment was sharper than any blade. I lived beneath that weight for years, shaping my thoughts to please him, shaping my heart to fit his design. I thought I was learning to rule, but I was only learning how to disappear beneath his shadow. Now that he's gone, I feel the absence of his control as much as its scars. There's a strange quiet in the palace, one that should bring peace but only brings unease. It's as if the walls still remember his presence, the echo of his orders still trapped between the stones. Even in death, he governs. Every decision I make feels haunted by his expectations. Every act of defiance feels like a rebellion against his ghost. I thought his death would free me, but freedom is not the absence of control. It's the courage to stop fearing it. There are moments when I still catch myself thinking like him. I hear his voice in my head, cold and sharp, telling me how a king must act, what a prince must never show. I hate it, yet I cannot silence it completely. It has become part of me. his legacy embedded in my blood. Perhaps this is the curse of royal bloodlines. We inherit not only the crown, but the ghosts that come with it. Still, I refuse to let his voice dictate who I become. His control may live in my memory, but my choices will bury it. I see the people differently now. My father ruled them from above, seeing faces but never hearts. To him, the kingdom was a structure, not a soul. But when I walk among the people, I see their pain, their joy, their hope. They do not need a ruler who commands. They need a ruler who understands. I wonder if he would call me naive for thinking so. Perhaps he would laugh, saying that mercy has no place on the throne. But I will not follow his path. I will not let his coldness poison what little warmth remains in me. At times I envy those who live without crowns, who wake each morning free from the burden of legacy. They live for themselves, for love, for purpose. I live for the ghosts of kings long dead, their laws written in my blood before I even had a chance to dream. My father believed this was glory, that sacrifice for the kingdom was the highest honor. But I see now that sacrifice without choice is nothing but slavery, and I have been his most loyal slave all my life. If he were still here, I wonder what he'd think of me now. Would he see weakness in the softness I try to bring to this realm? Would he call me foolish for believing that kindness can rule as firmly as fear? Maybe he would. But I also know this: he was never truly loved by his people. They respected him, they obeyed him, but they never loved him. And when my time comes, I would rather be remembered for the love I gave than the fear I inspired. That is the difference between us. So I stand now at the edge of his legacy, torn between what he taught me and what my heart knows to be right. The kingdom still calls me my father's son, but I will make them see me as my own man. His control may have forged me, but it will not define me. I will rule not as the prince he tried to create, but as the man he never allowed me to be, because in breaking free from his grasp, I have learned the greatest truth of all. Sometimes rebellion is not against the kingdom, but against the blood that built it. The night air feels colder these days, though I know it's not the wind, it's the absence of warmth that once hid behind my father's commands. I used to believe his control was protection, that he was shaping me for greatness. But now I see it was fear, not of the world outside, but of the softness within me. He feared my compassion, my ability to feel, because he knew a heart that feels cannot be controlled. He built his kingdom on dominance and silence, and he tried to build me the same way. But the more I remember, the more I realize how much of myself he tried to erase. He made me believe that love was a distraction, that trust was a weapon others would use against me. He trained me to hide behind walls, invisible, unbreakable walls that even I forgot existed. And for a long time I lived that way. I wore his discipline like armor, thinking it made me strong. But strength without heart is emptiness in disguise. He called me his pride, his heir, his legacy. But not once did he call me his son with love in his voice. That word son was a title, not a bond. And now I am left wondering if he ever truly saw me at all. When I walk through the grand hall where his throne once stood, I can still feel the echo of his power. The banners that hang there were once his pride, symbols of the victories he claimed, the lands he conquered, the people he subdued. But I see something different now when I look at them. I see the blood behind the gold, the pain behind the glory. He told me that the throne must always come first, that emotion clouds judgment. But what is judgment worth if it destroys every ounce of humanity in you? There were nights when I would stand by his study door, listening to him speak to his advisors, his tone sharp, his commands absolute. And in those moments, I realized that no one ever spoke to him, Everyone spoke for him and as around him, but never just to him. Perhaps that is what power does, isolates you until you forget what it means to be touched by honesty. Maybe he wasn't just a man who controlled others. Maybe he was a man who feared losing control because he had already lost himself. Sometimes I wonder if he looked at me and saw hope, or just another vessel for his ambitions. He groomed me to continue his reign, to preserve his image long after he was gone. But I will not carry his image. I will not inherit his coldness. The kingdom may remember him as a great ruler, but I will remember him as the man who taught me what not to become. If greatness means losing your soul, then I would rather remain forgotten. My advisors still speak his name as if it were sacred, as if every word he ever said was law written in stone. They do not understand that his way was not wisdom. It was fear disguised as order. I see the cracks in his empire now. The people's silence is not loyalty, it's submission. And I cannot build my rule upon that same foundation. I would rather rebuild this kingdom from ashes than let it continue as a monument to his control. The blood that runs through me is his, but it does not define me. I carry it like a burden, not a crown. For years, I let it dictate who I was meant to be: cold, obedient, untouchable. But no more. I will break the cycle he began. I will lead not by the echo of his voice, but by the truth of my own. My father controlled me for the kingdom, but now I will take back what he never gave: my freedom, my heart, my right to be human. Every morning, when I step into the throne room, I feel his shadow stretch beside me. It's as if the marble still remembers the echo of his boots, the weight of his authority pressing against the walls. Even in death, he rules this place, not through presence, but through memory. The council speaks his name in reverence, comparing every decision I make to what Fapi would have done. They cannot see that I am trying to unlearn the very lessons he forced into me. They want his ghost to live through me, but I am not his echo. I am the voice he tried to silence. I was raised to believe that control meant strength. My father showed no weakness, no warmth, no mercy, and he expected the same from me. But now I understand that true power lies in understanding, not in fear. I've seen the way people flinch when I speak too sharply, the way their eyes lower in the same submission they once gave him. It sickens me. I never wanted to become him, but the throne carries his scent, his discipline, his cruelty. I feel his presence in every command I give, and it terrifies me that his legacy might live on through my actions, even when I fight against it. I remember the day he told me I would never survive as a ruler if I kept listening to my heart. A king with a heart is a king who bleeds, he said. I didn't understand it then. I thought he was preparing me for the cruelty of leadership. But now I see what he meant. He wasn't warning me of danger, he was warning me against becoming human. He wanted a ruler, not a man. He wanted control to live longer than compassion. But I refuse to let that belief consume me as it consumed him. I would rather bleed for my people than become stone. There are times when I walk through the royal cemetery and stop by his tomb. The stone bears his titles, his victories, the names of the lands he conquered. Yet nowhere on that cold surface is there mention of love, of kindness, of humanity. That is what frightens me most, that a life so full of power could be so utterly empty. I look at his name and I swear to myself that mine will be different. I will not be remembered as another ruler carved from cold ambition. I will be remembered as the one who dared to love despite the weight of the crown. The more I learn of his past, the more I understand why he became what he did. His own father controlled him the same way, molding him into a weapon instead of a person. It is a cycle of pain, passed from father to son, each one losing himself a little more. But I will not pass it on. The curse ends with me. I will not build my kingdom on obedience and fear. I will build it on loyalty born from trust. The people will follow me because they believe in me, not because they fear me. That is the difference between ruling and imprisoning. I can still remember the last words he ever said to me: never let them see your heart. And now, as I sit on the same throne he once did, I finally understand why he said it. Because his own heart was already gone. He wanted to spare me the pain of feeling, but in doing so, he denied me the beauty of being alive. I will not hide my heart. I will rule with it, even if it makes me vulnerable. For what is a kingdom worth if its king cannot feel for his people? His control shaped me, but it did not break me. I survived his coldness, his expectations, his commands, and from that survival, I have found clarity. I will rule differently, live differently, love differently. My father used control as a weapon. I will use compassion as my strength. Let history say what it will. That I defied him, that I rebelled, that I changed what it meant to be a prince. Because in truth, this kingdom does not need another version of him. It needs a man brave enough to become something